So first, I'd like to
Hmm.
say this episode is sponsored by Bent Beauty, right? Discover your inner hot gal. I'm wearing Bent Beauty. I have on some Bent Beauty gloss and magnetic lashes. Check out Bent Beauty at www.shopbentbeauty.com and 25% off with the coupon code Oh Hell No. So enjoy, guys. So now I want to introduce my guest for tonight, Judith Fein. Did I say that right?
You said it perfectly.
Oh my gosh. Okay, that's
It
good.
must
she
be the bent. It must be the bent products.
it has to be.
Yeah.
She is a cultural adventurer, mm, travel journalist, speaker, and author. So welcome to the show, Judith. I'm happy to have you here.
Hello, bent girl. I'm happy to be here.
So you also did a TEDx talk and I watched it. That was so cool.
Did you
I
like
love
it? Oh, I'm so glad to hear
yeah.
that.
Yeah, that is awesome. Look at you. So tonight we're going to talk all about you and your journey. So I'm going to ask you some questions. Try not to jump ahead of my questions because you guys start talking about all this other stuff and you don't give me a chance to ask my questions.
I will
So
be question respectful.
let me lead you.
Okay, I'm a horse
Okay.
on the water.
So, first question. What skill did you have as a child or a young person that you didn't realize was a skill, but it serves you today in what you're doing?
I can answer you with a very strange answer. When I was a child, everybody wanted to grow up to be an actress or a famous hairdresser or a singer or something. From the time I was about 5, I said, I want to be a head in a glass jar with a mouth that works.
That's interesting. What did that mean?
I didn't want to deal with the body. I didn't want to deal with all the problems of life. Just give me a glass jar around my head and I can think, I can talk, and I can also write. And that head in the glass jar is the story of my life. But
Oh.
also, I had a quirky response to life always.
Mhm.
And I always had a kind of creative, offbeat approach to things. And who knew that that's what I would do with my life?
Wow. Okay. So you were a Hollywood screenwriter for 13 years.
Yes.
I want to know, how did you get into that business?
This is another crazy story. I was living in San Diego and I had been living in Europe for 10 years. And a friend of mine called up, a guy I had met in Europe, and he said, Hey, can I come down? I'm in LA with my friend. Can I come down and visit you? I said, Of course, I'd be so happy to see you. And he brings his friend, and his friend was a well known screenwriter. And his friend said to me, Hey, I hear you write plays and you did plays in Europe and everything. Can I read something you wrote? I said, No, not really. My plays are meant to be performed. He said, Come on, let me read something. And so I gave him one of my plays to read, and he took it back to LA and he called me up early the next morning. He said, I was up weeping all night. It's so great that I want to tell you, I want to teach you how to become a Hollywood screenwriter. Well,
Wow.
at the time, I had an Arab boyfriend and I was off to live in Morocco. And in Morocco, all I had was a typewriter with a French keyboard and an Arabic keyboard. And we communicated back and forth. This was pre internet. And then he said, Okay, you ready? So I came to the United States. I was like an alien. I'd been living out of the country for 10 years. I arrived in Hollywood and he took me into a Hollywood meeting. And the guy said, though I met with, he was a famous producer. He said, Okay, you have a deal. I'll talk to your agent. And I went, My agent? What are you kidding me? I'm eating couscous in Morocco. What do you mean, my agent? So this guy said to me, I'll give you my agent. And that's how I got started.
Oh my goodness, that's so crazy. See, that's when stuff is just meant to happen and it just happens the way it's supposed to. You weren't even looking for that.
At all. At all.
Wow.
I was just a head in a glass jar.
Yeah, you were. So, what is the life of a screenwriter like? Like, what do you do all day? And how does it, do you meet any of the stars? Like, give us the scoop.
I'll tell you this one, that there's a joke that they tell in Hollywood. They say there was this guy. He was so stupid. He wanted to get ahead, so he slept with a screenwriter. Screenwriter, you're the lowest person on the totem pole, but there's a reason, because they can't do what you do. They can't do it. They can't sit down and write a script and create it out of thin air. So, what it's like, I had these fuzzy slippers. One was shaped like a bear and another was shaped like a zebra. And I would sit in my nightgown all day long with my fuzzy bear slippers and my fuzzy zebra slippers. And then at night, and sometimes at lunch, I would be wined and dined. I got taken to the best restaurant. Yes, I got to meet the stars and I got to be part of that lifestyle. I went to the parties and then I would come home, put on my nightgown, put on my animal slippers and write. And it's a tremendously hard life emotionally. They throw a lot of money at you. There's the good part, but you pay for it, believe me. And
Really?
yeah, it's very, very difficult. They're very abusive. You know,
Mm,
this is my opinion. Again, I don't have the answer to everything. My opinion is when you go to see movies and they're all about violence and they all have guns and they always have dogs and guns and the women are either hookers or they're stupid or they're codependent, whatever. Who do you think makes these films? It didn't correspond to who I was as a human. Who makes these films? Okay, so you have $40 million and you're going to make a film and the trailer is someone with a machine gun solving problems with a joke and killing someone. It sucked the life out of me. And, it's fine for other people, but I did it for 13 years and then I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it anymore. It was so degrading to
mm.
be a screenwriter in Hollywood. But again, people want to hear about the parties and the stars. Yes, that's part of it. But what interested me was the storytelling and the medium of film. But that really wasn't what it was about.
Right. Oh my gosh. So, was there any, okay, so you said what you did love about it was the storytelling. So, I was going to ask you, what did you love about doing that profession? And that would
you
be, tell me.
you really learn how to tell a story. And it has served me, excuse me, allergies Santa Fe. If you saw my TED talk, it's all about my telling stories. You learn how to become a storyteller and you understand what are the ingredients of a story and how do you get an audience hooked? How do you films are very emotional experiences. How do you connect to an audience emotionally? And after 13 years, I'm not the best, I'm not the worst, but I know how to tell a story.
Nice. So, what was the worst part of that job? Because I always find that there is something about some jobs that you just hate.
The way you're treated. I'm not dropping any names, okay? So I had a very famous person in Hollywood pay me to write a film about parts of my life. I've had a pretty crazy life, okay? And I worked with a guy. He was a star. You probably would know who he is, but I don't do that about people, right? You would know who he was. And every day he would call me up and he'd say, "Hello, Judy. I need some spiritual advice." And I'd give him the spiritual advice. And then he would insult me about my writing. So he said, "What you wrote is a piece of crap. It's junk. It's stupid. How could you?" I'm like, "Okay, so you call me up to be a little guru and then you insult me." And every day he did this. And I was so demeaned by it. It was so awful. And one day he didn't call. And I thought, that's kind of interesting. And then somebody called from his office and said, "Judy, I have the worst news to tell you. He died." I couldn't even say I'm sorry. That's bad, right? I
No, it's not, Judy.
I
I'm
was
just
off
like you.
I was hey, I was off the hook. And this is the thing, it's a cutthroat world. It's like the stock market. It's like being on the floor of the stock exchange, except the medium is a script, is film. And it just again, I don't want to insult what anyone else does. it's just, and they kill you with encouragement. Oh, this is going to be top movie, top star. And then they start changing it. And then they hire someone else behind your back. When you see a list of multiple names for screenwriters, they don't know each other. They're replaced. They throw you out, they get the next one. And I think one of the worst experiences was I had a friend who killed himself.
Mm.
And I was tormented by why he did it. He was young and he was talented and he was beautiful. And I wrote a script about it. I wrote a movie of the week about it. And it wasn't about him killing himself. It was about his mother, who was in denial. And to write it, I'd gone to suicide survivor workshops, and I learned about that. And then I wrote this script. And long story short, one of the top names in Hollywood bought it, and he was going to be the producer. And they flew me and my husband out to LA, and they put us up at the peninsula. We were wined and dined. I was kissed on the lips. By the time I got home, they had replaced me with another writer because the producer felt more comfortable working with a writer he knew. This was for my life. This was my friend. So when the movie was made, I never even watched it. My husband took a shot of the of the credits because of course I was the first writer, so I had to share credit, but I never would watch it. So I found this very difficult, very, very difficult.
So wait a minute. So
Yes,
you wrote this originally.
yes,
Someone said, okay, we're gonna create this. And then they took what you wrote, got rid of you, and then
yes,
replaced you with someone else to write it the way they wanted it to be
correct,
written. And
correct.
so when something like that happens, do they pay you a certain amount to take the script from you to say, okay, we want to make this
No, they
into a
pay you
movie?
up. They pay you up front. You get a percentage on the back end. There's a deal that's structured. So you get paid for the script. The script is option, and then when the film is made, you get payment. You get credit.
Right.
But they can do whatever they want.
Wow. And
And
yeah, that's like a blow because you're like, that's my damn script. Like,
it's my friend. It's my
right.
friend. And I just never watched the film, but I found it very hard to take. But it's common practice, and I'm just hoping now with all the other venues, with Netflix and Amazon and Hulu, everybody doing original programming and
Yeah.
independent film. I'm hoping that that will change because it's an old patriarchal, ugly system, in my opinion.
Right.
So one time I was asked to come to a school and I was giving it. The kids were like, "Oh my God, what's it like to be a screenwriter?" So I was telling them, I'm not going to do jazz. I'm just going to tell them the way it really is. So I told them all of this, and I said, do something wonderful with your life. Do something where you're valued, where you feel good about it, where you're creative. And then they all were lining up saying, "Would you read my script? Could you get it to a producer?" That nobody wants to hear it. So that's fine with me. I
Yeah.
have a life. I have a life now that I love. So there you go.
Exactly. Like some people will still venture into, the devil's den, right? Because they think it'll be different for them, but you know, to each your own or each its own. I always mess up
Or
saying, so I'm just gonna move on. Okay.
to each his own, or
to
or
each
eat your own kind. Yeah, it could be that.
to each its own. Okay. So, when you finally left screenwriting, did
Yeah.
you know what you wanted to do, or were you just like, FTP, I'm out of here. I have nothing planned, but I know I ain't staying here. Like, what
Well,
happened?
I fell into an abyss, an emotional abyss. So,
Hmm.
oh my God, what am I going to do with my life? What am I going to do with my life? And I remember I made a decision. I got to do something really different now. So I went to Arizona and I checked into a Franciscan monastery, and I went up to the Mother Superior and I said, "Would it be okay with you if I did a 1 week silent retreat?" She said, "Well, dear, we don't usually do that here. It's not something we're used to, but I'll give you permission, dear." Well, over the course of the next week, during which I never spoke a syllable, I got into a major food fight with a nun. I went in my car and it was on a dark road, and a cop arrested me on a dark road because I wouldn't speak to him. He's calling me the bullhorn. "Get out of your car, get out of your car." And I wouldn't talk to him because I was doing a silent retreat. I had crazy, crazy experiences. So when I came home, my sister called and she said, you know what? There's this new travel show. It's a national travel show on public radio. Why don't you send them in a sample of what you do? You've been traveling all your life. I said, why would they want me? It's so hard to get a national audience like that. But my husband and I had done some voiceovers in Hollywood, and we had a little studio at home. So I went into the studio and I recorded the story of what happened to me during my 1 week silent retreat. And I sent it into the show called The Savvy Traveler. And 4 days later, they called and I became a regular on the show. So I
Wow.
had national audience. Then after a while, I said, "Oh, wait a minute. Why, I write. Why can't I write?" So I sent in an article to a newspaper and they published it. And I went, "Oh my gosh." And then I said, well, after I was writing for newspapers, they said, well, I could write for magazines. Then I could write for the internet. Then I could do, and I never knew there was a career called travel journalism. I just backed into it like that.
That's so cool. I just love that. I love when people are able to slowly walk into their path, like without putting out too much effort for it just happening effortlessly. That's when like you're onto something. So, as a travel journalist, what stories what do you write about?
I write about things that change your life. Sometimes I write articles about wonderful luxury hotels or fabulous things, but what really is the work of my heart is people's culture. And you don't have to go across the world, although I do. I go everywhere in the world with my husband. He's a travel photographer, he's a photojournalist, but it's people who are not like you are of great interest. You know the way you think, you know what you eat, but people who are different are exciting. And there's so much fear about the other. It's the opposite. Wow, you're learning, you're finding new ways to think, to worship, to have a history. You have a different history, you have different sensitivities, you have different intelligence, you have different food, different ways of speaking. That's what I write about. And I I want people to come with me. I'm not teaching them. You have to do this. I just come along with me. Let's go here. Let's go there. And I tell them stories about what happened and what I learned. So I could tell you about the 3 books I wrote if you're interested.
Oh, yes, we can get to your books.
Well, if you want, because you
No,
asked me
yeah,
what do I write.
absolutely.
But you
Yeah.
know something? Why I'm now asking the question: why do you travel? People travel very differently for me. Many people, what they do, they want to go someplace. Let's say they want to go to Paris. So they research everything, find out the best restaurants and the sites to go to, and they reserve everything and they plan out and they make sure they have residence at the best hotel and they're staying at the and eating at the best restaurant. And that's when they travel. For me, the opposite. I don't want to know what someone else thinks. I don't want to know what restaurant somebody else likes. I want to be Marco Polo. Marco Polo didn't have TripAdvisor. Marco Polo didn't have guidebooks. Marco Polo didn't have the internet. He went, he saw, he wrote about it. So what I do, this is the way we've been traveling for the last few years. I put my finger on a map. I say, I know about that place. Let's go. We book a flight and I book an Airbnb in the center of the center. And I make sure it has a or a kitchenette. And no planning, studying. So I want a place to reveal itself rather than going someplace with expectations of what it should be like, what I want it to be like. Forget it. Just go and have an experience. And that's what is the excitement of my life. And I try to share with other people how you do that. How do you ask people questions? How do you get close to people? How do you fall in the cracks and enter into another culture? How do you do that? That's what I know about.
Wow. So, as a travel journalist, who pays for your travel?
Very often we're invited. Either it'll be a country, the tourism board of a country, they want you to come and write about it, of a city. Sometimes it's a hotel. Sometimes it's an airline. Sometimes it's a cruise, an expedition cruise, a small cruise that's going to someplace really culturally interesting. They want you to write about it. They don't tell you what to write, but they open up experiences to you. And very often they're based on what your interests are. And they're very generous and they want to show you the best of the best. And, but for the last few years, we've been going on our own. Just go. I just want to go, not owing anything to anybody. And I want to experience it. That's it.
Nice. So share your most memorable trip.
The last one I took. That would always be my answer. The one I just came back from.
Where was
It's
that?
no, I'm just saying wherever
Oh,
that
so
that
whatever the last trip was.
whatever my last trip was, that's it.
Okay.
No, everybody is contacting us and saying, "Oh, with COVID, with the pandemic, you can't travel anywhere. Must be miserable." We figured out how to do it. So what we do, we put our finger on a regional map. When I say regional, it means the most you would ever have to drive would be 2 hours. Generally, it's under an hour. We put our finger on a place that we don't know anything about, that we've never been to, or we haven't been into years, or a place we think that's really boring. I hear there's nothing there. And we go there. We pack a fabulous picnic lunch. It always includes a hike. It always includes nature. It always includes history. And we're learning from the second we arrive. And that's what we've been doing 3 times a week, 2 to 3 times a week since the pandemic started. So we're always, always having adventures.
Look at Judith and her man. I love that, Judith. That
Well,
is so fun.
what would keep you from doing it?
I don't know. I'm a little nervous. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on today in this country, in this
Yeah,
world.
but that's not where you're going. You go
I know.
someplace where there's an old monastery or a ruin, but you always take a walk in nature. When you are walking in nature, to me, that is the healed space.
Yeah. Nature is beautiful.
But but you're in it. You're not looking at it at a picture on the internet or a photo in a magazine or something. You're there. And
Yeah.
when you're there, your thoughts open up. And as you walk, you're not thinking about what's going on in Washington, D.C. You're not thinking about who's protesting what or what political party. You're in another world. That's the healing power of travel. And travel doesn't have to be the island of Vanuatu and Yap, where I go. Uh, Travel can be the town next to you, but it is a mindset, it's a mentality that your life is an adventure and start living it.
I love it. My husband loves to travel. We do travel, but um
Where do you go?
just like the Caribbean, like our families are Caribbean. So
From
we love
where?
the Caribbean.
From where?
Our family's from Jamaica.
Oh,
Yeah. So we love, the Caribbean, and we like to go to carnivals. And this year I booked well, no, not this year. Last year I booked a trip to Spain, and I was going to take him for his birthday. I had everything planned, and this damn COVID
yeah.
messed up my entire surprise.
So you'll go another time. You just will do it.
I know,
Yeah,
Judith.
that's really
I,
everybody's upset because so many plans have been waylaid.
yeah,
But maybe you have time to think about it differently.
I
What
hope
is
so.
what's travel? You want to come back, in my opinion, in some way changed from the way you are when you left. That's it.
Yeah.
So maybe you can't go right now and your trip was postponed, but you'll have a better one.
Yeah, we will. So we got to go, we went to St. Lucia in November. That was beautiful. That country is so like lush and green and pretty. It's really nice. I never been there, and I was really pleasantly surprised. So even during COVID, we were able to go to the botanical gardens. It was beautiful. And we had a boat ride, and we went
Uh,
to the Piton, and like did all of the mud bath stuff. Like, I mean, that was a little scary with COVID, but I made it through.
but you did it.
Yeah, I did it. And then I made a little vacation vlog. That was my first time doing that, just capturing some of the moments from the vacation. It was really cute. I'll send you a link so you can check it
Well,
out.
I would love to. I would really love to see what you're doing.
Yeah, it was fun.
Well,
So,
we were going to the Caribbean a lot. We absolutely loved it.
yeah.
There's so much emphasis now on diversity. Just
Hmm.
go to another country. You're in diversity.
Yeah.
Slavery, for example, started in Barbados, and
Mm,
it was white on white.
wow.
The first slaves were not black; they were white, and they were poor. They were kind of indentured servants. They were poor Irish and Scots people, and they were taken to Barbados to work the sugarcane. But their legs, they were burning in the sun. They couldn't take it. Their skin, they were very, very fair skin, and they couldn't take it. And to this day, their descendants live there, and they're called the Redlegs because their
Wow.
legs would sear and that is where slavery started. And we went, so what's the story of that? What is the story of that? And it's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, that is fascinating. I'm gonna have to look that up.
Yeah, and
But yeah.
you have to go there.
I went to Barbados. I went there for crop over.
And
I didn't love the food. I'm a little biased because I'm Jamaican and our food is the
really,
best.
really,
Our food is the best. I'm just saying. And yeah, I didn't love the food. The island I thought was beautiful. And the carnival experience for me there was not that great. But I'm a baby carnivalista. So but that was a little disappointing, but I did have a good time overall. But yeah, I think the island is beautiful, but I just didn't love the food, and food is a big thing.
food is a big thing.
Yeah,
But for us, when we went there, we just got really into the culture and the history.
yeah.
And then it's fascinating. There was something very interesting that happened in Barbados. In the schools until now, well, we haven't been there in some years, but when we were last there, they know absolutely the kids are taught nothing about their own history, but they can tell you every British king, the name of every British royal, the British history. They don't learn their own history.
Wow.
And in the 1950s and 1960s, there was an economic crisis. And many people from Barbados, they knew everything about England. They knew nothing about where they came from. And they went to England to get work. And most of them worked in kind of menial jobs, in a hospital or, waiting. They were, blue collar kind of entry level jobs that they were able to get. But they did that. And when they retired, they were English, they were British. They didn't want them there. They didn't want the people there. So they went back home. And when they got back to Barbados, nobody wanted them there either. They had left. They'd become so-called British, but the British didn't want them. And they developed something called English madness, where they became like psychotic because they didn't belong anywhere. They didn't know who they were. If they're not British, if the Brits don't accept them, then who are they? It's such a really deep, powerful history about the people there. And to this day, I mean, to this day, maybe, some years ago when we were there, they don't teach them who they are in school. Who are you? Where do you come from? Do you come from
Yeah.
Africa? Of course you come from Africa. When did you come from? They're not taught anything. So they are British. That's what they learn. How do you feel about that?
Oh, Lord. I think that it's sad that in these countries they don't learn more about, their history.
Yeah.
But I think that's a widespread problem,
Yes, it
right?
is.
Like
Yes, it is.
Dominican Republic. I watched the documentary on there and I was appalled.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
But when you
yeah.
travel, when you start finding out about this, and then when you're interested, people know if you're really honestly interested. It just opens up a world to you. They take you into their world.
Yeah.
They would take you places where the food was great. They'll take you to the best. music. They'll take you everywhere because you're truly interested in who they are and where they come from.
Yeah, and when we go, we
Mm.
like to, get into the culture and cuz we're Caribbean, so we
Yeah.
want to catch the vibe, it's not like we're outsiders to we're outsiders in terms of we're from a different, island, but
Yes.
we all vibing together. So yeah, definitely we always hook up with the taxi guy and be like, "Yo, take
Yes.
us to get some food." You know what I mean? So we
Yes.
do that. But for me, the food, again, like I said, if you've ever been to Jamaica and you've had the food in Jamaica, like it's just such a variety and the food is just so different. So your expectation is just a little bit like,
Higher.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So
Yeah.
then when you taste their different things, you're just like, that's interesting, but
But it's not Jamaica.
yeah.
But
And
I
now
love
people
love
gonna
that
kill me.
you have a Caribbean background. You
Yeah.
go to the Caribbean and you'll expand it. You will,
Yes, yes. So that's what I was trying to do with Spain, like that, because I'm like one of those people that whine about the flight. So my husband loves to travel. He wants to go everywhere and anywhere. He got to go to oh my God, I can't remember the name of this damn place for work. It's someplace in Africa, and he was so excited. And he did a safari. He just loves stuff like that. Me, I was like, I don't know
no.
about that. Yeah. But he had a great time and he loved it. Me, I'm always like, oh my God, 15-hour flight. Like, that's too long. I don't think I can do that. That's gonna just like not be good for me.
But I
Like,
bet before you started doing podcasts, you were probably, I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. That's not for me. It's just a matter of saying yes. If
yeah,
it's not going to hurt someone and it's not going to hurt you, nobody likes 15-hour flights. But you know what we do? We think about, hey, we're going on an adventure, and we just put up with the flight.
yeah.
I don't even talk to anybody. Just isolate yourself, put on headphones, watch a movie, try to sleep, whatever. You get through it, and then you don't think about the flight after. You think about where you went. So you don't know which maybe Zimbabwe or South Africa or
No, I can't remember. I'm gonna ask him because
Kenya?
nope. Um,
You'll find out. You'll
yeah,
ask him.
I will. I'm gonna ask him right now.
Okay.
So I'm gonna ask him, guys, and I'm gonna find out because I can't remember because I just can't. Sorry. So moving on until we get that
Till
answer.
you hear from your from your significant other.
Yeah, he's downstairs, so I just text him.
Okay.
So, what do you enjoy the most about meeting new people on your travels?
Their stories and who they are and their cultures and where they come from.
Okay.
That's what interests me the most. Who are you? Where do you come from? Like the books that I wrote, I wrote two books during the pandemic. They're very different from what else I've written. And what they're about, they're based on emails that I wrote home every night. So in Mexico, for example, our neighbor was a guy. He had a Mayan name. He spoke Mayan. It was his first language. And he was told he's Mexican. There are no Maya left. Well, of course there are Maya left. The ancient Maya civilization? Of course. People didn't go away. And so we went with him into the Maya villages to find out who he was. And
Wow.
now he says, I'm Maya. Amaya, Amaya. And he's excited. He's speaking the language. His name is Maya. His culture is Maya. But he was taught, there are no indigenous people. You don't want to identify with that. Well, yes, he does. And now, so going with him, for him to discover who he was and to go to these villages and to watch his joy at speaking his language and to find out the history, of colonization and what happened when the Spanish conquistadors came. It was devastating. And you still see it today. So it's not about saying, oh, I don't like the Spanish. It has nothing to do with that. What is the real history? And finding out what it is and then seeing how it plays out today. The descendants are still living that story. And that kind of thing excites me. Of course, the music, the food, we're very into the food. But it's like on a last trip, we started meeting. Did you ever see Mexican wrestlers,
No.
lucha libre on television or
Oh,
anything?
okay. Yeah.
The
Okay.
mask thing, and it's completely crazy. They have
Mm-hmm.
characters that we got taken into that world.
Oh,
We were allowed
wow.
to go to their training. We sat up front, and I'm nonviolent. I don't like anything violent, but they're very skilled. These are skilled acrobats and athletes. They're incredible. And we were sitting right up front. And really, I don't like violent movies. I would never write them. I wasn't interested in it. And there's blood pooled in front of me. They would be throwing each other out of the ring in front of my feet. I'd see all this blood, and I thought, oh, it's paint. No, it's not paint. Because they know how to do it. They don't really hurt each other. You can get hurt,
Right.
obviously, but going to their training, you see that level of athleticism, of skill, of discipline, of mastery. And for kids, most of the kids that we met, they come from very poor families. They would have no access to anything. They'd be in a dead-end job all of their life. But the first thing they learned is manners, teaching them how to behave, how to talk to people. When we would go to a training, every one of the young they're called luchadors. Every one of the young Mexican wrestlers would come up to us and introduce themselves, hold out their hand, welcome to my country. So that's part of their training.
Yeah. I love the thing that I love about different cultures is how proud people are of their cultures. Like I grew up with that. My mom, my mom and my dad are both Jamaican and very proud people. Jamaican people on a whole are just so proud of their culture, of, who they are. And I see that in other, cultures. And I love that. So when I hear a story of someone who was like told to not focus on their culture or be
Yeah.
something other than who they are or where they came from, like that really makes me sad because it's not right. Because if you don't know where you're coming from, how are you going to know where you're going? So
So you were raised to think of yourself as Jamaican. Jamaican, you had a cultural identity.
absolutely, I will fight you if
Mhm.
you try to tell me I'm not Jamaican.
Isn't that? Of course, of course.
Like, are
So,
you crazy?
but how is that different from America, from in the United States?
Um, because it just is. So this is like a big conversation that me
Yes,
and my friends
yes.
have because when you're born in the United States, you go home to Jamaica and the Jamaicans look at you as you're not Jamaican because you were born
No,
in the States. You
yeah.
were born in foreign and you're not Jamaican, right? But you are Jamaican because that's your culture. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't matter where I was born. That's how I was raised. That is my culture. If I wanted to trace my roots, I have to go back to Jamaica. Like
To
my
Jamaica.
grandmother was Jamaican, my grandfather, my great grandmother, my great grandfather, like I don't have any American roots. So, how am I not Jamaican? But people are ignorant. So, I don't know. It's like something that you can go back and forth and argue about. I've had podcasts with other women about this and it's a big thing, in
It's a
all of
very
the
big thing.
yeah, so you have
Cultural identity.
yes.
Not
So
how many years you've lived here or there, but who do you identify with? What are your roots? It's very, very, very important. I
yeah.
think one of the big problems in the United States is that it's so rootless.
Mm,
People don't know. I asked people, one of the books I wrote was about this, about the importance of your ancestors. And I asked hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in the United States, all ages, sizes, shapes, cultures, diversity, colors, who cares? I just asked them what they know about their ancestors. Maybe they know their grandparents' name. They know that their grandmother came from a city, came from Los Angeles. But what about before that? They know nothing. If they don't know anything, and that rootlessness, that you're not planted anywhere, that you're not standing on someone's shoulders who came before you. I think it's a real problem in the United States, and yet it's understandable. Many immigrants who came here, they suffered a lot in the countries they left behind, and they didn't want to talk about it, so they raised their children to be American.
yeah.
But then the kids grow up, they don't know who are they, where do they come from? And I think that without that connection, it's like if a tree had no roots, the tree would die.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think it's very, very important. And it sounds painful that you're told you're not Jamaican. Of course you're Jamaican.
Yeah. Thanks, Judith. Like, don't play with me. I will listen. I have gotten into arguments about that. And people know it's like a button for me. So sometimes people will just mess with me. Like, I don't play. Like, don't you dare try to tell me who I am. Mind your damn business and figure out who you are. Okay.
But that kind of pride, yeah, you can get into discussions and people can be stupid and say stupid things, but knowing who you are is a great gift. And most
Yes.
people you meet in the United States they don't know who they are.
Yeah, and I thank my mom for that because she's, very like even though she left her country, years ago to come here and have a better life for us, me and my sisters, she's always stayed connected to her roots. So,
So that's, but she also has a tradition of healing in Mexico. There's a very, I mean, in Jamaica,
Jamaica, yeah.
there, there's a really strong tradition of healing, culinary, about the food. The spiritual connection is very deep. The
Yes.
different religion there and how they play out and where they come from. Yeah, it's really, you're lucky.
Yeah, thank you. So, is there anything that you discovered along your travels? Oh, before I go into this question, my husband went to Mozambique in South
Oh,
Africa.
that's great. Okay.
Yeah, so that's where he went. Is there anything that you discovered along your travels that you took home with you? That you said, "Oh my God, I discovered this here. I loved it so much. I practice it at home," or "This is something that I love and I do now," or anything like that.
Well, let me tell you one that's maybe a little intense. Okay.
Okay.
We were on the island of Mogmog. Don't even ask. It's a remote island in Micronesia. There were three people who had been there from outside in the last year. My husband and I were two of them, okay, if that tells you. And whenever I travel, I always ask, as a travel journalist, I say, please, can I get to go to a life ceremony? So a life ceremony could be a marriage, a birth, a death. And I was told that I could get on a boat and go to the island of Mogmog. They were having a funeral. So when we get to the funeral, it was very, very interesting. A man had died, and we sat outside. There was a hut, and inside were women, and they were doing ritual wailing. It wasn't just regular crying, but oh, oh, a wailing sound. And then they started speaking about the man who had died. And luckily, there was someone there who translated, who knew French or English or something. I could communicate with him. And they were not saying good things. One woman was talking about how he had been abusive to her. Someone talked about his drinking. Someone talked about that he had stolen. And I was like, what? This is a funeral? I can't believe it. And I said to the man, I've never heard anything like this. They're saying all the truth about it. And he said, when a person dies, it all is expressed, the good, the bad, the ugly. That a person is not a saint just because they die. They left behind people maybe they have hurt, they have damaged, they have wronged. They, also people they've helped and been wonderful. And when a person dies, it all comes out in front of the community. But once that person is buried in the ground, you never talk about it again. That's it. This stuff is never mentioned. And I thought, that is worth like 20 years of psychotherapy. You get it out. You're not carrying it around. The person who died wasn't an angel. You're getting to express it. You have witnesses. It's not just held inside of you like some terrible secret. And then, when the person is dead, it's released. There's a release, there's a community release when a person dies. So we flew back and we came back here to Santa Fe, and we were invited to a big party that night. We were so jet lagged and exhausted, but we go to the party and everybody's always saying, oh, what happened? What was your last trip? And I told them this, and it changed the whole party. Everybody was saying, I think I would like that. I think that's a really good thing. Instead of having to say what a wonderful, warm person whom everybody loved, what if we just told the truth? First of all, keep us in line during our lifetime because you're
Right.
not going to get away with it. But also, what a relief to be able to deal with the truth. So that's the kind of thing that, sometimes it's funny and sometimes it's serious. But that really made me think, yeah, when a person dies, say the truth.
I love that.
You do?
Love. Yeah, I do, honestly. I really
You
do.
can relate. I'm going to have to travel with you.
Yes, I would love to.
Wouldn't that be the coolest? We'll go to
Be
Jamaica.
fun.
I bet you'll have
Yes,
a different experience.
you would have fun.
Of fun,
Yeah,
yes.
you'd have
But
fun.
I bet you would fall in the cracks and find out things you never knew about this
I'm
rich.
sure there are so many things. My mom sends me videos all the time about different things. We watch videos about stuff now, today.
Yes.
There's so many. Me and my husband talk about how many places that we have never been to, especially me because he was